So let me ask you about two elements, and then we'll open it up to questions. So one is, do you imagine some kind of national pool, national marketplace that private insurance gets sold in, that if we can't call it an exchange because that has a bad odor from Obamacare, it at least looks like it, where you have a place where everyone can go and buy insurance in the non-group market. Do you imagine something like that, or is that just off the table? It's too close to Obamacare.
I think that there's a mixed view about that among conservatives and Republicans. Some really believe in that. Others are, because they care more about state autonomy and state regulatory autonomy, are concerned that if you have one national market, you're actually reducing the role of states in regulating their insurance market. So because there's division on the conservative side about this point, I would be surprised to see it actually get through. And I would say in general...
Then what would the individual market, this is what I can't figure out, what would an individual market that would be efficient look like if you didn't have some kind of pooling mechanism or exchanges or marketplaces, call them what you will, for insurance companies to sell to everyone?
Well, the ACA, of course, has pooling mechanisms at the state level. You could do that. I mean,
some of us prefer to national.
Yeah, well, so actually, I wouldn't rule out the possibility of, in the non-group market, a national market, and here's why. If you can't get to that 60 votes in the Senate for a bipartisan approach, what can you do through reconciliation? Well, one of the things in theory you could do through reconciliation is create a new program that involved refundable tax credits in a national market that would have certain regulatory architecture, right? So I wouldn't, I think, but that it would be because of that reason, not because of the across state lines rhetoric, but it would be because just as a functional matter, if we couldn't get to 60 votes for a bipartisan solution, Republicans were left to replace the ACA with 51, that might be the mechanism to do it by a reconciliation.
All right, I want to go back to the mandate. If I understand, it's the thing that sticks in the craw of Republicans more than anything else, and is more closely associated with Obamacare than anything. I take it as a premise. You have to force people to buy insurance if you're going to have no pre-existing disease exclusion in there. You have to force them, otherwise healthy people won't buy. There are only a few mechanisms you can do it: a mandate, continuous coverage, your proposal, which is you can only buy at certain times, and a penalty for every year you delay. As I understand most analyses of and attempts at this, none of them work perfectly. Continuous coverage and penalties for late purchase work poorly. They have exactly the same problems as a mandate does, if not worse, that healthy people don't buy. 25-year-olds, all right, the price will go up a little bit. I'll put it off. Continuous coverage very much depends upon how you design it, and where it's been used has not actually produced the results Republicans put it on. But I would say, I'd ask your view, what guarantee do we have that anything other than a mandate is going to work better? And second of all, aren't they just different versions of a mandate, which is forcing people to buy insurance against their will or pay some kind of penalty? And it's just a charade to argue that we're not forcing people if you have a requirement for continuous coverage or added premiums if you delay buying.
Guaranteed issue doesn't matter. So this idea that you have to have an individual mandate because you have guaranteed issue, it's totally wrong. I know that's sort of this dogma now that Jonathan Gruber has circulated among everybody in healthcare. It's not true. What matters is the price. So what you can do as an alternative to having this complicated Rube Gold system that we have now, thanks to the ACA, is provide direct financial assistance to people who have to pay higher premiums, right? So
called high-risk pools.
Oh no, I'm not a fan of high-risk pools. I think something very simpler and cleaner is possible. So let's say you had a system kind of like the ACA, where the tax credit that kicks in to cover the rest of your premiums is key to a percentage of your household income, or your gross income. So for example, in part, depending on your income bracket, let's say you're in the quote-unquote upper income bracket for the ACA, the tax credit kicks in when the premium is above 9.5% of your adjusted gross income. So any excess premium above that is covered by the premium assistance payments. you don't have, you can have a medically underwritten insurance market and still have that system in place, right? So if the person with lung cancer and multiple sclerosis, their gross premium would be higher, but you're offering direct financial assistance to cover the excess of that premium relative to that person's income. Do you see what I'm saying? So
You would tie the tax credit to two things now, income and your health.
well, yes. I mean, in fact,
So why doesn't that encourage insurers just to charge exorbitant amounts of money and make a whole lot of dough? I mean, it seems to me just to create the absolute worst incentive you can imagine.
Thanks to the ACA, insurers' operating margins are regulated like utilities.
Oh, you like the MLR provision? That's very unfree market.
But I think, you know,
Larry Summers even didn't like them.
I think it's really dumb. But the point is that that's not an opportunity that insurers have in the current system. So there are lots of ways to regulate the insurance market such that what you're describing doesn't happen. But the point I'm trying to make is, again, it's not a policy point, it's more of an economic point, that guaranteed issue specifically is not the issue. The issue is the price, the underlying price, both the gross price and the price net of subsidies that people are paying for insurance. And there are lots of ways to provide us financial assistance to the people who are sick and poor and vulnerable that don't involve creating massive adverse selection in the non-group insurance market. And I think direct subsidies is a better way to do that. And the ACA didn't want to do that because that would create a bad CBO score, and everyone was concerned about the CBO score being $2 trillion instead of $1 trillion.
I have to say, given the insurance company's tendency to view the government as a honey jar and extract a maximal amount of rent from them, somehow this just doesn't strike me as a very efficient mechanism. All right, so we're going to go and open it up to questions. Please raise your hand.